Let's go. Let's rock.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another awesome episode of the Hit Confirm number 24. I am your host, Casey. You can call me Grogu if you want.
Oh
Being, jo-
boy.
being carried by the Mandalorian, aka Coach, right here.
That's an honor for you to drop that on me. But we out here supporting each other. That's how we made it.
Yeah, man, that's how it is. That's how it is. You guys are fans who've been like, listening to the show. We don't come at you like 24/7. We don't want to hit you because we like to like, kind of sit on it for a little bit, think about it for a little bit, and then when we come back, we hit you with like, whatever news came out, whatever topics that we would like to talk about, and it feels fresh. It feels new every time I feel like we do this.
We keep it, somewhat on a spontaneous note when we're just like we're ready, we got to do this and get it out there instead of like trying to force ourselves to a schedule when sometimes that works, but then some days you ain't really feeling it like that. So
Yeah,
yeah, I think
yeah,
I think our
yeah.
ways of doing things are pretty good, but we try not to make you wait too long because sometimes we do. So sorry about that.
Yeah.
We'll try to keep it coming for you.
Yep, yep. We try to keep it consistent, but I feel like we keeping it consistent lately. So yeah, our fans let us know where it's at. Where's the next episode at?
I appreciate y'all as always. So I guess starting out, we'll just say what this episode's about. It's gonna be about your controller peripheral to use to play. But before we get into that, that's gonna be a fairly quick thing. So we're just gonna kind of gloss over some stuff we've been hearing about and some hot topics real quick before we jump into that one.
Yeah. So Strive. Yes, everybody in the FGC is talking about Strive, from the Mortal Kombat players to the Street Fighter players to the original Guilty Gear players to the Marvel heads, DBFZ players, like anybody and everybody in the FGC was playing the Strive beta, and we all know the reaction, the common reaction, which was lobby systems, they need to change that, which they can only do so much for between the time, I guess, now to release, right?
I see a lot of people say that, but you got to consider that we don't know how old that build is
Yep,
and what's
yep.
been done to it since it's been like, I guess since they made it into a form of a beta. So it might be like, 5 builds behind for all we know. After they put in the new characters, they've probably made adjustments and changes. So I think the whole thing is like, oh, the game's out in 2 months, we're gonna change it, implies that the beta was like extremely close to the final build, which we have no idea.
Yeah. And then they had like, tons of infinites, tons of glitches and bugs and stuff. But outside of the negativity, because we always have like some negative going towards Strive, at least, from the OG Guilty Gear players most of the time. Uh let's talk about the good stuff from Strive. Like, what did you felt about the game? Did you get a chance to sit down with it?
I didn't actually play any matches. I just messed around in training mode, like looked at all the characters, try to get a feel of how it felt like, responsive wise, and just general gist of the system. Because I'm not generally a guy who goes too hard on a beta, because I
Right.
don't know how different it is going to be from the final product or stuff like that. So I just want to mess with it because I hadn't touched it before. But generally, I'm not interested in betas. But generally, my impression of it seems solid. There's always stuff you can work out. It's like all the stuff you were saying, the glitches and bugs, but like just from a the general basis of it seemed fine. Obviously, there's improvements based on what people posted on Twitter and stuff you saw in matches, but I feel like that's just kind of par for the course when you drop a new game.
Yeah, yeah. Wait, but so that's kind of interesting because a lot of people who played the beta, they went deep into it. Of course, most of us played training mode, but like outside of training mode, we played multiplayer, or if we were lucky enough, played versus mode. But I'm curious, since you like had most of your time in training mode, what character did you mess with the most?
To go in there and I looked at all the characters' move sets and normals and just messed around, felt their movement. I think the character I looked at the most was Pot because he was the big hot topic. So I wanted to mess around with the Karas and just see what was like terrifying about the character. So that's kind of who I ended up honing on to just because it was like the big thing people were talking about. What about you?
So first of all, I'm happy you mentioned that character, Pot. I just want to get this out the way. Before the first original beta, I sensed that that character was going to be good because of the context of how that game works. It's more so ground heavy, in your face. The screen seems like it's like much more shorter than it past Guilty Gear, but I can't really like tell for sure. But
That's okay.
yeah, so I messed with Pot earlier, a lot more in the last beta, and he was really strong. I messed with him a little bit in this beta, and he was still ridiculously strong. But I didn't really touch him that much, not as much as Zato and Nagoro Yuki. Um, I mainly because I told myself once I saw Nagoro Yuki, I'm going to main that character flat out, which is still a possibility. But they showed another character that's I have a pass with that I'll talk to a little bit later. But yeah, I mostly played a little bit of Nogiruyuki and a lot of Zato actually.
I was watching your stream and you were playing Zato. I thought that was the stuff you were finding was pretty interesting. But you pointed out something that stuck with me, and then I've been thinking about it every time I look at the mostly OG vets because I know you mentioned before that there was some negative reaction, but I feel like I felt there was a pretty mixed reaction, whether that person was a vet or somebody who was coming in new. Because I felt a
Right.
lot of new people had like really good impressions of it actually. So but I guess it's because they hadn't had that legacy behind,
Yeah. Yeah.
on it. But circling back to what I was saying before, you mentioned on your stream, you go, I don't think that people who played the legacy game should immediately go to their original character. And at first I thought about it and I'm like, I kind of get that. And then the more and more I looked at Twitter, the more and more I looked at the game, like through streams and stuff, I'm like, there's actually a lot of sense to that because they're not the same characters. They're almost like characters that are inspired by like this is I don't want to say reboot, but like a reimagining of Guilty Gear and how they want to make it in a new term. And so if you look at the characters like as buff, nerfed, as in like a linear progression, I think you're just gonna get really frustrated. And sometimes there's some merit to that because maybe some of the characters didn't get what they deserved or they came out worse. But I think even if a character comes out better, if you get too attached to that legacy feeling of them and think that this is the next linear progression of them, you might get frustrated when there might be something really fun and engaging with that character anyway, because you're just thinking about all the old ways. So I think my point of view is that thinking of them as new characters that are inspired from the legacy forms is much more healthy and might help you get a better understanding of how each characters work and even leaving your legacy characters, assuming you're not attached to them due to like aesthetic and stuff, might be a good thing. So I definitely, latched on to what you said there, and I think it's pretty important.
Yeah, and I'm glad you heard that out because the reason why that came to mind is because usually when I approach a fighting game, of course we all have characters we love, and we talked about that in the past. What characters you love? Um, I personally approach it first and foremost with the mindset of playing, understanding the system. And sometimes I always find myself, because I'll look at the character select screen and I'm like, I do want to main this character for now. I always tell myself that I want to main this character for now. And later on, maybe play another character once I like understand the system. Because by the time I understand the system, I know exactly what I want to do as a player and what I want to achieve in with the characters that their perks and everything. So it's funny because coming from past Guilty Gear games, I started off in Plus R when Plus R first released in the Japanese version of PlayStation 3, and playing like I actually didn't play Eno originally. I started off playing characters like Testament and Justice. But yeah, as time went on, I developed a love for a player named Ogawa, and I will watch his matches. Like he's actually one of my favorite fighting game players of all time, even though he mostly plays Guilty Gear, or he's known for Guilty Gear. I will watch his matches like almost religiously. One, because I really like him as a player, and two, I really like fighting Zato players, and I really like the dynamic that they bring to the game. Even if I'm blocking or anything, I love the dynamic. So once Strive came out, and I saw that even before actually Zato was announced, I was like, if Zato's going to be in this game, because they're marketing this game to be like, easier than past Guilty Gear games. So I said, I'm going to try out Zato because I've always kind of wanted to try him out, but like I never really like, he takes different kind of work than like Eno. So I was like, yeah, he's got to be easier. I wonder how they're going to make him easier. So even the beta finally drops, and I'm messing with Nagoriyuki. Nagoriyuki is, I'm pretty sure everybody can agree with this. It feels like they built the game around that character starting off. He feels very, very Strive-ish. That's the best way I could put it in that beta. But then I played with Zato. Again, I never really touched Zato in past games. I just only watched videos. But I would apply like, I guess spacing mindset in the whole when to summing like mindset. And I just kept those two things in my head, and then that's all I needed. And I immediately noticed Zato's what makes him easy. Because at first glance, looking at Zato in past Guilty Gear games and now, he looks like the same character. And most Guilty Gear players will tell you that he's probably like the most intact Guilty Gear character in Strive. And I can agree with that. But if you're new to Zato and you want to learn him, the two things that stuck out to me was they made his special cancels into specials with Eddie, which is something he never had before. And two is the fact that he can he not only does he get Eddie back very quickly, but all his Eddie moves are very active. So what that means for a new player, it means that you can kind of make mistakes and still like apply whatever pressure or the idea you want with the character. And having like active specials with the Eddie helps a lot, because honestly, it feels like you're playing Marvel at that point. Even his air dash is different. It's not like past Guilty Gear games. It's more like Bedman. And since they added the air dash button, and I've played Marvel in the past, I was like, oh, I can like do like the storm where I can kind of chill in the air and come down with a button, because in Strive, normals are really good. So, but yeah, that's it. That's pretty much it. That's how I came to that conclusion of like, don't play a character that you've played in the past. And when Eno comes out, I'm kind of like have a bunch of other characters, since Strive is going to be like a little bit easier. But I'm definitely going to main Eno and still play Zato heavily on the side. Who knows? He might end up being my secondary, or who knows? I might end up maining him. But like, he's helping me learn the system a lot. Funny enough, like I said, I think newer players obviously are going to learn the system just as quick as older players, because they're playing. It's new for them, and they're taking in anything and everything without having like that past transgressions of like to kind of struggle with in their mind. So yeah, I think if you're a Guilty Gear vet, my suggestion is like play a character that you've never really played before in the past, or play Nagoriyuki, and then you'll like really understand Strive, or it'll come to you quicker. So yeah.
Uh, I guess the next thing I point out, like I guess to round out the Strive discussion before we move on to the next topic is what would you like to see? Based on just on the beta, what would you like to see? Whether it be training mode, character changes, system changes, what stands out to you like you want to see changed, removed, or whatever?
So at first, I was liking the change to FD, faultless defense. It didn't. I guess for newer, I understand. I have mixed feelings about it. For newer players, it helps them understand and get into Strive quick and easy, but not having to like worry about the extra burden of like jumping and FDing to stop, so you can block a grounded normal. But then there's the other side of me, that gives a gear vet side of me, where it's like, man, somebody made a tweet recently about like what is a high level thing that you like to see or do in a fighting game. And in Guilty Gear, there's certain situations where the opponent or you are in the air FDing because you're obviously don't want to get like hit by a grounded normal, unblockable by a grounded normal. So you FD and they wait instead of doing the grounded normal, they actually wait for you to land and they ground throw. And it happens not often at high level, but like you most likely will see it at high level. And it's something that like in terms of depth of the game, I don't know how deep Strive will go, right? But from terms of like that extra depth, that I would know would be missing. So I would like to see air unblockables to come back for FD, but judging by how like Strive is going, I'm gonna say it's not likely. Um, and I like what they did with IB instant block, but they need to make the frames a little bit more easier to do because and I understand why they did that because you don't want to have the FABs in the world. Fun fact: in older Guilty Gear games, FAB used to be called the White Potemkin because he used to FD. I mean not FD, instant block so well, his Potemkin would look white most of the time. So, but yeah, make instant block a little bit easier because right now it's super hard to like deal with Nagoriyuki versus Axel matchup. It's going to be hard with easier instant block anyway, but still, uh, they need to make some change to that at least because it feels like it's impossible to instant block. It's harder to. I rather slash back. It feels just as hard as slash back in AC Guilty Gear days. So yeah, those are the two changes I would like to see. Other than that, I like the direction they're going with the game.
A lot of people pointed out that that jumping was really strong because of the way FD worked, and so it was harder to like chain down people because you didn't have like the Gatlings to keep them, grounded or to catch them out of pre-jump. So that was something people pointed out that you kind of mentioned there. And I kind of laugh when you mentioned FAB and the IV because it's like it's a double-edged sword, right? Because you make IV easier, you make Pot, who already seems dominant, even stronger. But if you don't, and then it's harder to punish them because they made Hammerfall like -5, so you need IV to block them. So it's like no matter what direction you go into, you kind of buff that character a little bit. I thought that was funny. I think the main things I would want is I hope to have frame data and hitboxes in training mode. Other than that, like I don't want to comment too much on the system that's still kind of in development and that I didn't play any matches for, so I don't want to comment on any of that until I actually sit down and play that. But overall, that's mainly is just like the training mode stuff. And obviously, if they make sure whatever player matches setups they got is going good, and so people can just roll into matches.
Yeah, I did have got the I was one of the lucky people to actually play that game offline versus mode, and it's super fun. I find myself mash and rematch. Me and Nitro Noodles match and rematch to get right back in there. In the game felt more like Guilty Gear offline because the pacing and everything. It's still the scrambles are still Guilty Gear. So if anybody was to say Strive isn't Guilty Gear, that game still has its Guilty Gear moments. Air throws, all of it. So
what was next on our docket?
So the thing that came up recently, I actually didn't watch too much of it. I got most of the highlights, which was the Japanese roundtable for fighting games. And yes, like I said, I caught the highlights, like the trailers and such. Because I was at the time I was at Nitro Noodle's place playing Strive. So I did get there. I got home right when it was like in the middle of it. But I thought it was pretty interesting uh, that they're going to add, like, I could have saw this coming, but they were going to add like Guilty Gear characters to Samurai Showdown. I'm pretty sure everybody kind of saw that coming, but it's now the question is which character. But yeah, that's like I said, I've only caught like the highlights, mostly like the trailers and stuff, not necessarily too much what they were talking about. Did you catch that?
To me, not much really remarkable. You know, you had a lot of lip service to the general things, and they danced around, rolled back a little bit, and yeah, then you got the trailers. Obviously, the biggest one was Chizuru from KOF was gonna be in that game, and they got the team Three Sacred Treasures with her, Kyo, and Iori, and so that's a character that a lot of people love. I love her.
Funny
Um,
enough, I don't. I hate her.
so yeah, she hadn't been in a game since what, like 2002 or three.
Yeah,
So
I think it's 2003. I don't know. It's one of them. 2002 or three. Yeah.
yeah, so a lot of people are glad to see her back, and so that's another cool thing. And like you said, the Sam Show character, and the SNK community had a lot to say about that because of various things. But generally, it's gonna be interesting to see what character they put in there because a lot of people are guessing biking, but it can literally be any character with a weapon. So I think
Somebody
they
mentioned Elfelt, and then that will
yeah,
be a curveball, but that will
I
probably get
can't
a
see
lot of
that
players
one
into that game.
because she doesn't really outside of her like bouquet, she doesn't really like use like melee. So it's
No,
gonna be
I
weird
agree.
to disarm her.
But that
So
would definitely be a curveball.
it would. So like, I don't expect to see like Jam, Milia, Slayer, stuff like that. It'd be like a Soul Kai, Biken, even a Yuki who's new, and
That's
kind of in the
true.
spotlight. So like Axel, I've seen thrown around. It'll be any character with a weapon. So I'm just like I've been posting about this on Twitter, but I just want to see a Guilty Gear character just get disarmed. Like, Soul can't do his gun flame anymore. He's just kind of sitting there, wondering what to
So
do with his life. That
I
would
know
be actually be sick.
the Rev 2 players, their experience with Johnny, they would probably love to see him get disarmed.
Fighter gets his weapon knocked out. He can't do anything. That would actually be pretty funny. So, that should be interesting when that happens. But other than that, I didn't find too much. There was nothing that was like big and standing out outside of Chizuru and the Sam Show announcement.
There
So,
was one,
what's that?
and this. So right when I got to Vinny's place, Nitro News place, the first thing he says when I'm at the door is, "Don't check Twitter." And I'm like, okay. He's like, because they announced the last Guilty Gear character. I was like, oh, all
Talking
right.
about that, so I just kind of slipped my mind.
And I was like, okay, cool, whatever. And then he was like, do you want me to tell you? He kind of said that. And then I was like, yeah, because I'm probably not going to watch the roundtable. I don't know. We'll see. He was like, no, 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 no. At the last second, he was like, no, no, no. I want you to find out. I was like, okay, all right. But then right when I didn't check Twitter. I just wanted to like look at the time on my phone. And the first thing I see when I take it off dark mode is Ben, uh, Smile Bomb. He sends me a message saying don't check Twitter. Everybody was
Got
saying
leaked.
don't check Twitter, and I was getting tagged and everything. I was like, yeah, I won't check it, but I think I know what's going on here. Coach, we're losing you. We're losing you, coach.
Hello.
Yeah, you're here. You're here.
Sorry about that, folks. But yeah, I was asking you, was it worth the surprise?
Yes, I've just got goosebumps saying yes because, like, oh my gosh, My favorite part about Eno is like sharing. This is gonna sound so weird, but sharing like her, if that sounds. Basically, what I mean by that is like there are a lot of fighting game characters where you like, but you don't really get to express that love for them and how you like them and why and stuff like that. It's kind of hard to do that unless you like actually play against that person or you play they experience you playing the character in the game, right? But her redesign and the character, I always say in my opinion, like she could get away with being the poster girl for Guilty Gear. Like she can get away with it. But seeing her redesign and I'm a big fan of like rock music, all levels. Uh and just to see her redesign, just to like pay homage to rock music is just even the way the dress looks, the hat. Um, they really spoke to me with the hat because I played Johnny also on the side in Exert, and just to see her with a big hat like that, I'm all in for it. I was just happy to see everybody else happy too with the character for her to come back. It was like a celebration out of all the Strive stuff that was going on.
And then like the next 2 days we got a flood of fan art, so that was cool too. So that's
Yeah.
always good. I think the
And her,
last thing we kind of missed was that Tekken tease, like the 5 second tease of the
there's a for that we
Poland's
missed
prime
it.
minister. Yeah, yeah, which I guess we're gonna see at a later time, but so that's not
Yeah,
really too important. So I
yeah.
guess the last thing is the icing on the cake is when Oda-san from SNK announced that KOF 15 would indeed have a internal rollback solution, or that they're working on one, and so that put a lot of minds at ease. After, especially after playing the Strive beta, they're like, we can't go back to another new delayed netcode game. So if
Yeah,
you were ready for KOF 15, that should be some real good news for you.
yeah. FGC went out with pitchforks and like torches out against SNK because like you said, experience and strive. You can't go back to delay base after that, and unless you can find a way to do like what they did with Plus R with current games, which from what my been told by people who work in the dev industry or dev position, it's very difficult to implement. Not impossible, but difficult to implement in newer games. But yeah, or games that came out already that have delay based netcode. But if your game hasn't released yet, now is your chance. This is your chance to add rollback. We've seen it work. It we can play with people from all over the world. It feels like they're sitting right next to us. It's a beautiful thing, and it's the next step for fighting games to grow and get bigger. And to miss out on that, it's you're not only losing money, but you're losing fans. So you don't want to do that. And I'm so happy SNK is just actually just being communicative about it at least because people were very scared and they were questioning why they didn't really say too much about it for KOF at the roundtable. But the fact they went on Twitter and spoke about it, that lets me know that they're looking at Twitter constantly, and they we they was like, all right, we can pull the gun away. The FGC got you got to pull the gun away from their heads.
But it looks like they opened up a communication, so they probably have some other plans. But I think ultimately it works out. Um,
Yeah, that's what I like to see though. Like honestly, my opinion, my personal opinion, if they don't implement delay based, I mean delay, if they don't implement rollback, it's just the fact that they were listening and they responded. That's what I care about the most, honestly. So, yeah, pretty good.
yeah, had that organized message going. But I think we hit about what 30 minutes talking about the FGC news. So you want to
Yeah,
go ahead and just roll into the topic of the day, because I
man,
imagine it's not gonna be all that long.
it's
But
not,
but
but it gets me heated every time I talk about it, and I'm pretty sure all my fellow arcade stick players will get on board with me with this one. So, first of all, I like to say, man, so I want to get into all right. So current new gen fighting games, right? They are catering to newer players, but they are also, well, how they cater to new players is they make the game easier. And how also do they make the game easier? Well, they make it on consoles for consoles. What's on consoles and for consoles? Controllers, regular old D-pad. Um, so, and then you also have the infamous Hitbox, which I now call the Hotbox, but I'll get into that later. But yeah, now it's just now you have like these three, I call them the three tiers of like controllers that you use. We're not talking about like, what's the guy that played on the Guilty Gear that beat Dogura with the wheels? Was it wheels? I'm not sure.
Player.
Yeah, he was using like one of the steering wheel. That's all I know, and he beat Dogura with that in Exert. That's something else. We're not talking about that, but we're mostly talking about like the three tiers are arcade sticks, which one where you have like the either the ball was it JLF
You have a
for
ball or bat top on it.
metal ball bat top. Yep. Or you play on pad, which is everybody knows what a pad is on a controller. Or you play the hitbox. These, and I have a tier list with these three. It goes hitbox first, pad second, and of course stick last. You know why the hitbox is first, Coach. I don't even have to explain it, but you go ahead. You could probably pretty much tell me why the hitbox is first.
I mean, there's no travel time between directions, essentially, so that opens up a lot of possibilities to. I would say to do things that you couldn't do, but it makes the process much faster once you have Hitbox under your hands.
Can I give a few examples real quick of how cheap hitbox is? Cheap box is. So this is possible to do on a stick, but not consistent. So one example, um, if you play, Piccolo in Dragon Ball Fighters, right? So how he can summon the orb and it just follows you. With UI Goku, when you walk forward with him, Ki Blast go through him, and since orb has Ki Blast priority, you can pretty much know what happens from there. It will follow him as he walks. So in order to block right away, it's you have literally one frame to block that Ki Blast. You can't do super that. You have to literally within one frame go from forward to what was it like down back real quick, or back or something like that real quick. Um, One way you can do it on a stick is if you do the speed run test. If you pause and then that happens. But yeah, or you could play on a hitbox where you just press the button and let go of the next button. Coach, I can't tell you when somebody told me that, it's just because it put things in perspective for me. I was like, man, nah, this can't be true. I still gotta, that's pretty crazy. But I always kept giving Hitbox the benefit of the doubt. But then Strive came out. And this really was the last straw for me. I don't know if you were keeping up with all like the bugs and glitches and stuff like that and what you can do in Strive in general, right? But Coach, we gotta summon Coach back. Guys, coaches coaches go. Let's summon him back. Okay, he's back. Yes,
I
what's
don't
up?
know what's up with my mic, but my bad. Yeah, but I know what glitch you're talking about. But continue.
Yes, so like, yeah, basically the glitch is you can FD and like you get a wave dash. It's almost like similar to like AC Johnny where he could wave dash. But this is if I remember the notations correctly, it's you use the dash button with this one. Since Strive has a dash button, it makes you press the dash button, you FD break at the same time, and you kind of like do that really fast, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong, but yeah, that's what from what I've like remember. But you go way dashing across the screen real quickly, even with characters like Potemkin. When I saw that, I was like, and then when I found out that it's hitbox that found that a hitbox player that found out how to do that. I was like, oh, okay. I don't know how you feel about like I already have like my gripes with pad players and like with they're making stuff easy for them and then making it and it's easy for them to block and stuff. But that's I could let pad players slide because they still have like difficulty with execution and stuff like that too. But I don't know, man. Hitbox is suspect. It's what do you give me something, coach? It feels like Hitbox is just too powerful for me.
All right, how about this? You continue with your tier list, and then I'll go piece by piece about what I think about each peripheral and their pros and cons, and we'll do
Okay,
it that way.
okay. Second, because I already mentioned Hitbox is first. That's like S tier, S plus tier, if you will. Second is the pad. Now, yes, the pad, like I mentioned, it kind of like is annoying because they can just use their thumbs or like they're not using a lot of wrist maneuvers to make a decision on with like with the muscles in terms of like where they going from one direction to another on the pad. It's not too much. It's a lot of thumb action going on. But then there's a like there's a caveat to that. There's like you still have to you know make sure you react the right way with the pad, and some things are not executionally like easier on pad compared to like even stick or hitbox. So it's a give and take on pad. Like if you play on pad, honestly, if you're new and you play on pad and you think you should play on stick, I mean you can give stick a try, but uh, in my opinion, stick to pad if you feel comfortable with it. Pad players are just as good as stick players, and vice versa and stuff like that. So, and then there's stick, and it's kind of obvious. I kind of mentioned it before. The reason why stick is last on this tier list is because they're catering to newer players, and more fighting games are being more like catered to like the console style, not arcade style, if you will. So they're going to like that's why you have a lot of games going from like 8 button to like 4 buttons and stuff like that, or they're making like they give you so many like attacks on one button and stuff like that. So yeah, like the stick, it's stick is for like a combination of a nostalgia reasons. Uh, you've played in arcades before, um, or like you just love hearing those buttons being pressed along with the stick being moved around. So, but yeah, there's and then there's stick has its merits too, like where you can do some things executionally easier than pad. Like I said, it's a give and take between pad and stick. But man, that hitbox, no, I can't get it out of here, get it out of my face, burn it. We need to eliminate hitbox, ban it. I'm sorry.
We're not the only one to share those thoughts. So shout out to old Kari Safari, who's out there defending the hitbox with his life. And I'm gonna get into my thoughts on that. I'll probably put that at the end, cause for some suspense. But first, I guess before I'll preface this with if you play whatever you feel comfortable with and ultimately can practice on and afford. Don't feel like you need any specific peripheral to like get in there and play. I know a lot of newer players struggle with that when they see people with sticks and they think this is far better, and I don't know. But that's my thoughts on that. But let's start out with the old arcade stick, the classic, like you said. So, in the past, in tournaments, you were not allowed to map those macros. And so sticks with all their face buttons like right there directly on there were easy because you can access them with your finger easily. And so button combinations were much easier than say on a pad where you could not map those macros. And so like if you needed to like, hit two buttons in succession or at the same time or nearly at the same time, that was easier on the stick. And so that was always stick's advantage. And another advantage people don't think about is that you know, before Hitbox came out is it was a universal tool. So pads change from system to system, and so before the days of having God, the word slipped my mind, but having some kind of adapter, that's what I'm thinking of, to change it, you had to switch your pad from game to game, and pad players are pretty finicky about how the D-pads and analogs and whatever works. So that the benefit of having stick is that once you learn that style, you can play it on any arcade cab, any system if you had one. But the cons were it's generally it was expensive. And once like you said, games started catering to more macros, and macros became allowed in tournament, like for like Street Fighter 4. People tended to want to use pad became like pretty much just as good or arguably better than a stick, depending on how you look at it. But generally, your advantage with those are your advantages with stick. As far as pad goes, depends on which pad, on which system you're using. Generally, they don't have all face buttons unless you're talking about the old classic Sega controllers, where they have 6 buttons on the front. But most of them, let's see, they have the 4 buttons on the front. And things you can do with pad, they can actually, there's some things you can do with pad that kind of are easy, like Hitbox, because you can use both the control mechanisms, the D-pad and the analog. And you can do things like real quick. Like there was a player, I think Vangeef, who would use both of the D-pad and the analog to do standing command grabs, like on a dime, because you could like input part of your directions here and part of your directions there, and that was pretty. And that's sort of like the hitbox effect. So that's one of the things hitbox players would go to is like you can do a lot of these things on pad due to that. But the general disadvantage of pad is that they're not built for generally, not talking like the Hori pads and stuff like that, but like the stock pads that you get with your system, they're not built for that constant use. And so what you'll see with pad players is that they're constantly buying new pads, especially like with the PS4 generation. You saw it all the times, like I'm on my 5th pad because the buttons will start to wear down, or their down backs won't work. And unlike with a stick, which I guess is another advantage of the stick, is replacing the parts is pretty easy. That also goes for Hitbox. But with pad, you generally can do most of the things, pretty much everything you can do on stick, and you can kind of emulate some of that hitbox behavior. But yeah, with macros and stuff. But even then, there's still finicky things like plinking is a little different, weird on pad. You got to kind of come up with your own method of that. But generally, I think pad, if you're comfortable with that, is easy go to. You just have to understand that if you play a lot of fighting games, you might wear them out. So you might want to go for one of those higher end pads, like a Hori pad, that might if you're comfortable with that, you last longer. Um, so that brings me to Hitbox. And there's a few other there's another periphery I want to mention because of the things you said with Hitbox, but I'll get to that. So with Hitbox, the thing is with directions, there's no travel time, like I mentioned. So it's like with stick and pad, generally, you have to take time to go from like forward to down back. But with Hitbox, it's near instant, especially if if you're quick, if you have sliding motions for some of the commands they have in games. So you're able to do things quicker with less travel time or no travel. Well, I would say no travel time, but essentially very little travel time, which allows you to fit in tight windows. And it kind of opens the door to do things they're not impossible with sticker pad, but they're extremely difficult to execute, and they might be extremely difficult to do consistently. And so that's the kind of line that the hitbox is on, where people will look at it and be like, yeah, yeah, you can do this on hitbox so easily. Like that's why that game it became popular in Tekken, because learning the Korean backdash on hitbox is probably easier and more consistent, just because you're pressing buttons in a rhythm rather than trying to move a moving object in a specific direction at a specific time. It's just I think that the button pressing is just easier to do generally. So Hitbox has all the properties of the stick, where you can use it on various systems. You can replace the parts once they wear out, which is just the buttons, but might be some switches too, depending on what kind of buttons you have. But yeah, they're generally more expensive than sticks, unless you get them like custom made or you have some kind of setup. So that's a price kind of thing. But I feel like they're pretty sturdy. I never heard anyone complain about their durability or how much they last. So yeah, I would actually agree with you, and I would put Hitbox above stick and pad just because of that nature of how the buttons work. You do have a little bit of a learning curve, but I don't think they're unfair, and that's only because the developers don't do anything to dissuade various peripherals in their games. You know, and I don't know if they can, but for the most part, it's like if you could plug it in, you can do it. And it's gonna be up to like TOs if they care about that. But the big thing I want to actually mention is you left out a very used peripheral. Do you happen to know what it is?
The full schedule.
No, a very commonly used peripheral, and you left it out. It's something that a lot of fighting game players play, but nobody thinks about.
Hmm. I'll mention
Ding,
the full
ding,
schedule
ding, ding,
after,
ding,
'cause,
ding,
mainly
ding, ding.
because the thing that comes to me when it comes to the whole, extra or macros in general is there's a rule with macro, right? Where if you have an extra button that serves like, the same purpose as another, sort of, that's like illegal. That's like
Yeah,
not part of the
well, the
rule.
full schedule stick was illegal because it had two buttons mapped, or it's two directions mapped to a single button.
Yep,
So
exactly.
that was essentially an illegal macro because that's not an in-game macro; it was a hardware.
Yep.
But do you know what peripheral I'm talking about though? Commonly used, extremely common.
No. Can't come.
The computer keyboard.
Oh yes. Oh, I forgot to mention this, and I was thinking about mentioning it because there's a player that I actually like in DBFZ. He doesn't play no more, I don't think, but he goes by Korean Wrestling Man. I don't know if anybody's ever seen his stick, but it's an actual like stick, like like a hitbox or a regular arcade stick. But instead of it being buttons and a JLF or whatever, it's literally just keyboards.
Yeah, so
It's
yeah, a lot of people will mimic those
neat.
arrow buttons as the directional buttons on their quote unquote hitbox. I think they call them mix boxes, but that's kind of an extension of this. What I'm going with is that a lot of people, like especially in countries where they play mainly on PC and they mainly play the old games because like consoles are overpriced and stuff like that. A lot of people came up on GGPO back in the day to play ST and all those old games, and many of them, they might not have had a pass to plug into their computer, so they all played on keyboard. Multi-blood players, you can find a lot of them that came up on keyboard because that game is the way people play it is you don't pay for it, you download it, and so it's popular in places again where you know you're not going to be buying these consoles or high-end computers. And so a lot of people came up with the keyboard, and keyboard has pretty much essentially the same advantages that the hitbox has, and it's always kind of been there. It's a little weird for a lot of people to think about, but if you want to learn how to play fighting games on your keyboard, it is very viable and very strong. The big downside of the keyboard is if you do play a game on console, then it's not really a streamlined and obvious way to do that. But like if you play computer games on your computer like Melty Blood. Like if you enter a Melty Blood tournament where they're using it, it's only on PC, the latest version. So you'll have a chance to use it there, and there might be like hardware issues. But that's one thing people don't think about is the keyboard because a lot of people came up on those old games, and that was the easiest way for them to play to download those games for GPO and play on their keyboard. And so a lot of people developed those techniques. I feel like the hitbox was like the natural progression from the keyboard itself because it emulates directional button pushing, but it tried to make it ergodynamic, which is putting the up button near your thumb under the light kick button or whatever you want to call it on the for as far as the actual attack buttons. And that's actually another thing between stick and hitbox. Depending on if you might have a particular disability, it might be easier for you to use a hitbox because you don't can't use extreme wrist movements. And it, or if you can't really press buttons, you might be able to move the stick in a certain way. So if you have some kind of like condition where you have to consider what kind of device you use, that's another thing to consider as well. So between hitbox and stick and even pad. So like that's which brings me all back to my point of use whatever is comfortable with you. But I will say I do agree that hitbox is generally an advantage. I don't think that you can do impossible things, but you're starting to see like the stronger players migrate to it, like Daigo and stuff like that. So I definitely think that if you're a serious competitor and you're like, what do I want to use? I'm willing to use anything. I don't have a problem saying learn hitbox like just straight up, but ultimately you could play on anything you want. It's just as long as you're comfortable with it, you're willing to practice with it, and it's comfortable for you. It doesn't hurt your hands or wrist or arms. Do what you got to do. But that's my take on it.
Hate or win, baby. Get that hitboxing. Start winning them tournaments. No, but like seriously, like I joke when I say I want hitbox to be banned. I don't really want it to be banned. There's a reason why I made this tier list is because hitbox is like, the pinnacle of like pretty much what you can do, or so far that we know what you can do humanly possible in fighting games. So and I think that's like, if you looking at the beauty of it, that's actually pretty cool if you think about it. And it might, who knows, hit a hitbox, just this concept alone might get somebody who was never cared about fighting games into fighting games, because like you just said, they probably played on keyboard all their life, never really had access to consoles. They always had access to computers. Maybe they're like family worked in some like, a place where they got computers all the time and keyboards all the time. All they had was access to keyboard. So maybe they see a hitbox and like, man, I can finally like get good and like or people can finally see my powers, if you will, and see how good I am in fighting games. Cool, I'm gonna actually pick this up and take it seriously. So I do, like I said, I think even though I crap on Hotbox. And by the way, I say Hotbox because there was a Hitbox player recently that got burnt by sort of faulty Hotbox. I mean Hitbox, so I'll call it Hotbox now. But other than that, like I think it's preference. Honestly, is whatever makes you comfortable and makes you can express yourself even more when you're playing and stuff. Give you a good feeling, and that's all that matters, man. Keep yourself happy. Um, don't do the full schedule route. We won't go deeper into that. We kind of went into it actually anyway, but just don't do that, or else people will find out and they'll call you out. So yeah.
But yeah, those are my feelings. I actually remember talking to someone about this who has a hitbox and has never played on any other peripheral except for keyboard. And I brought up the point of like, what if you wanted to go to this person was a Guilty Gear Xrd player. I said, what if you wanted to go to Japan and play on the arcade? And this is like right as they were doing the new arcade cabs where you could plug in your own PlayStation peripheral on it.
Yeah.
And so like it was right as that time was happening. So he was like, "Yeah, well, I could just plug it in." I'm like, "Well, let's go back like 3 months before you could do that." He's like, "Oh, well, I'll just go and I would bring my PlayStation and we'll play online with players." And I was like, "Yeah, I guess you could do that." But and it's like I guess you don't specifically have to have the arcade experience, but like I guess the big reason I wanted to learn stick was because like when you go to like final round CEO, you'd see like the cabs there, and I want to sit down and play Alpha 2 or whatever, and you can't really do that if you don't know arcade stick. But that's just like a really fringe benefit these days because most people are probably never gonna sit on a cab.
I never really realized that until I actually go to those tournaments, because that wasn't my reason for playing on stick. Funny enough, and the reason why I never realized that, when growing up, I had a couple arcades near me in Stone Mountain, and I would go there and I would always play the fighting games. So yeah, it was natural for me. I found myself playing uh, Street Fighter 4 when it first came out. I found myself playing it like, if you ever seen stick players how they claw the pad, that's pretty much them, like a pseudo stick, if you will. I used to claw the pad, and I really wanted to play on stick, but I didn't at the time know it existed until one person I played. He's my friend today, but during that time, let's just say there was like a gap in between when we see each other, and I found him again online, and he sent me a picture of all his sticks, and I was so jealous. I was like, I got to get a stick now. But yeah, I never really thought about like uh, playing on stick, because you won't be able to play on arcades anymore. So, but yeah, like I don't really think about that until I get to the final round or any other like major or anything like that where they have a bunch of cabs. So, but it's very very nostalgic experience. Still to this day when you play on stick. So, but like I said earlier, you don't have to play on stick. You don't have to play on pad. You don't have to play on heck. You don't even have to play on none of these. You could do like the guy did with the steering wheel. You can play on that if you want. Just
We're all out.
yeah, if you can mod it, which I've seen some crazy mods, you can do it. It's all, preference. As long as it stays within the rules, you can play on anything.
Yeah, with all the converters and adapters out there, the your ability to choose, like if you want to play on a Super Nintendo controller, go for it. There's just so many peripherals and adapters and stuff you can do. So, enjoy your freedom and find out what you want to play on. So, uh, other than that, you got any closing thoughts, man?
Uh, I just want to say, everybody, you never know who's watching you. Um, Even if you're feeling down and out, there are people that love you, believe it or not, um, and they want to see you succeed. And just keep on keeping on. Think about that. Think about those people that love you, and then you'll get through the day, through the work, through whatever. So yeah, just try to stay positive, whatever is going on in life, and yeah. Um, Yeah, I'm happy to be here with Coach again, doing this, and I hope to do another episode and keep continuously doing this. I love this community and love you all. That's
Yeah,
about it.
man. Definitely enjoy being on the show with you, having these talks. It always feels good when we close it out because we're having a good conversation, and we definitely got some stuff like immediately down the road. So stay tuned. We'll have a few episodes coming, few guests here and there, but we got you. We got you.
Yep.
All right. Well, with that said, peace out.